I don't believe that there's such a thing as perfection. I think there's learning. So whether it's a child or an adult, whether it's an athlete or musician or artist, a business person, or someone just trying to pass grade level 6, it's about are they learning what they need to learn to get the correct answer or the correct way of doing something to the point where they feel good about their outcomes, they feel good about their accomplishments.
Hi, friends and family, and welcome back to another edition of Pam and the Purple Couch podcast. Today, we're going to talk about grace over perfection. So many times we put the external pressures on our children, ourselves, the people around us, and we don't even realize it. So today on the couch, we're going to talk about giving yourself some grace. How do we take that moment to pause, to reflect that we don't need to be perfect? We just need to do, as Loki says, the best we can. So guys, It's funny, again, we're sitting here and we're talking about, things beforehand, and we're talking about physicality in the social media world, stars, celebrities that we're looking at, and what expectations are we setting for our kids? I'm disgusted by it. We have all of these wonderful drugs that are hitting the market that are to help people get into the best shape of their lives. But again, like anything that comes with a quick fix, we can overdo it, and we can take a medication, we can take a shot, we can decrease our caloric intake, but are we putting in the time to build back the muscle? Or are we putting in the time to start learning proper nutrition? Or are we just setting a standard that's not attainable? And then we're setting our kids up to fail.
Yeah.
Yes.
As we were getting ready to come into this podcast, we were talking about celebrities that we've seen, 20, 30 years grow up in front of the television. And I can let you know as a woman that looking at some of these young ladies
that ruin themselves due
to the pressure. The
fact
pressure
that
of perfection.
You need to be, well, I wouldn't even say perfection, because that's really an opinionated topic, more so just being pretty. The fact of you needing to be pretty, or else you're not going to be successful as a face.
Yes.
Or weigh a certain thing, or have a certain weight.
I like to go back in time when we think about some of the icons of the 70s, okay? Marilyn Monroe, we all think about. Marilyn Monroe was a size 10, 12, okay? And we're going to talk about that in just a second here. So let's just, Sophia Loren. These were voluptuous women that looked like women, had curves.
We call them curvy now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or plus size, to be honest with you. Let's be real. A size 10 right now is considered plus size or obese. I'll give you, do you not remember a year ago? So I went in, and I'm a biohacker. I'm all into making sure, because I'm going to live to 120. So I want to take care of myself and take care of my body. And it was, okay, again, going back, well, to what scale? Oh, well, Pam, you're obese. By what standard?
By what
I am a 5'1" top-heavy woman, and I have been since I was a little girl. I have to understand that about myself, and understand that my expectations come to what I am comfortable with. When we see role models of young adult in the market, I don't mean to say in the market, but that's what it is nowadays.
Yes.
Because even social media, it's all marketplace. You're selling yourself.
You're selling yourself just so that you could look, sorry for crassness, but sexier.
Yes,
people don't care about what beauty is. They just think the more curvy someone is, or the more their face looks like shiny, then that looks good in their book.
Well, see, again, I know you don't like talking about the generational changes, but this is important, especially when we're talking about perfection.
No, this is...
Because in the late 80s, 90s, anorexia, things along these, remember the Carpenters, the music group?
Yep.
That was really in the forefront of the eating disorders. But now we've normalized eating disorders. Now, oh, well, you need to be bone thin. Think about some of our musicians, and I'm going to say it. Ariana, is it Grande? Isn't that beautiful? So talented, funny, Comedy Central. I mean, amount of talent in her pinky is enough. But this little woman, and I say little woman, I look and I worry. I'm like, please give her a sandwich, you know? Then we have other celebrities that we are shunning because they've gained 5 pounds.
Yes.
Well, I'm letting you know, most celebrities, if you all don't realize this, are not tall. Most of them are vertically challenged. And 5 pounds on a shorter person is like 20 pounds on a tall person. You know, so we're setting these expectations of you must be this thin. You must be this BMI.
You must be this sexually attractive for you to have a brand.
Well, yes, that's it.
Well, I think also, like you talked about women, but on the men's side, when I was thinking about this podcast, you know, when it comes to perfection, and for men, it's muscles, right? It's the 6-pack abs,
Yeah.
right? How many dad bods are in advertisements? Not much, right? And then even athletes, right? The perfect scorer, the perfect passer, the perfect, you know, whatever.
Yeah, you got to make sure they at least look good for photo shoots.
Yeah. And so that.
But what happens to being human?
Yeah.
And that teaches a lot of different things to our children, our youth, right? But just like women, men feel a lot of the same pressures, probably more so now than 10, 15 years ago.
I think ever before.
Yeah, and you know, you said Ariana Grande. One of the ones that I thought has gotten some recent scrutiny over the last few months is Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, right? So this was a man that for years was idolized for his muscles and working out regimen and all that, and then he did his new movie, The Smashing Machine.
Okay.
And then he dropped a bunch of weight. A lot of people criticized him, and he actually said, actually, I'm very healthy. I just leaned down. I'm not this, you know, building of a man anymore. And he looks great, you know? So I think that this whole element of being perfect or reaching that certain level of perfectionist, maybe it has its place in the world. I was trying to think of like the alternative, like the counter. Okay. So where does the alternative, where does it come into play? And I think even the most perfect people still make mistakes.
1,000%. Yeah. I think that what we have to start doing is and maybe this is just humankind. Maybe this has been going on for centuries. But I think about talking to young girls, you know, besides the podcast, I'm not sure our viewers realize that I don't wear makeup coming to work. I started doing this about, 4-5 years ago. I think it was right when we started our junior senior high. And I realized that there were no local role models that were mature professionals that didn't come into the office fully glammed out. Mm-hmm. And I started noticing at the grocery store, 13, 14-year-old young ladies with airbrushed makeup on to go to the grocery store. Then I started realizing in our own junior, senior high, the girls that would come in with, you know, full done makeup. And I'm like, ladies, what is this? Do you know what your skin's going to look like by the time you're 50? But we're normalizing this airbrush fake persona. Just like when, you know, Loki and I've talked about, you know, his disgust of social media, and it's because of this fakeness that's not real.
The
filters or the moment. Let me just put this. Everything's great. Well, do you know what the suicide rate is for these influencers? The depression rate for these influencers? All the life that they have is what you're seeing on the Instagram or the Facebook. Outside of that, a lot of them are depressed that, you know, are trying to find real friends because everything is just what you can give or get.
Mm-hmm.
And
it breaks my heart.
I also want to state that I know perfection of like the episode here, perfection is meant to be in the physical sense, but mentally,
I was going to say it's not just in the physical sense, mentally too. When we have parents and we see it in our school system, and this is a private school system for neurodivergent and, outside of the box thinkers.
Yeah, it's not going to be perfect.
But Loki, we have got our kids that are coming into kindergarten and first grade, and even already with some of the delays, the parents are already pushing, well, what's he going to do when it comes to college? Well, guys, if we can't get through elementary school,
if
there's
he
not
can't
going to be
walk,
college.
Yeah, we have parents that they have this super high expectation of their children, autism or not, delays or not. They just have these huge expectations of,
Yeah,
of their children. And if they're not hitting that expectation or even coming close, something's wrong.
a baby pops out of the womb and goes like, I wonder what his house insurance is going to look like.
We laugh, but that's so true.
That's right.
We're taking steps backwards and teaching coping skills, self-regulation in kindergarten and first grade because our parents have never been taught that.
Yes.
So if our parents have never been taught coping skills or how to regulate themselves.
How to have a social conversation without the fact of if you slip up once, you immediately have to abandon everything.
Pretty much. It's again that if I am not successful at everything, I'm a failure. And, I want to go back to, we just had that podcast and you made a wonderful comment and you were talking about it was the emotions, the decisions that we make due to our emotions. Absolutely. But now think about that. We get in that trap. It is a circle pattern. And then when we start being dictated by the way that we feel, that then changes and becomes part of our attitude. So remember when we were talking about the pessimistic people? Well, it's the same thing when we're looking at perfection. I liked, and what I was going to say is you made a comment, and I'm going to try to summarize it, when you were stating that it's the failure that makes us better. Well, we're not teaching that anymore.
Yeah, we're not teaching that.
We're not teaching that. We've got to break some eggs in order to bake the cake.
Yeah, the best learner is failure. You don't learn just by succeeding at everything you do, because once you have a consistent, success rate, once you immediately fail and ruin your streak, you're going to feel awful about it. And I feel like the children that are being taught this way are going to not feel emotionally stable if they fail one time.
Well, I'm going to go even a step further here.
I was trying to avoid the word.
Well, let's think about our nonverbal neurodivergent learners. Okay? I have seen over the last 12 years in the clinic and academic setting, many of these children, that it's not because they can't speak. This was a case for you, Loki. So when Loki was learning to vocalize expressively, when he would say Loki, it would come out as oh-ee, and people would look at him. Or the grandparents, the aunts, the uncles, what did he say? And every time you would try to communicate outside of our house, that's what you got fed with was, what did he say? I can't make it out. What are you talking about? How many times I've seen teachers that you have a nonverbal child that's learning to express outside, and the first thing they do, I don't know what you're saying. I can't make it out. Well, I watch these children get deflated each time that happens. What we see then is a child learning to express themselves, but because the outside world can't understand them, then they shut down.
Yep.
I watched a podcast the other night and it had Temple Grandin on it. Loki, do you remember Temple Grandin? So she was one of the first autistic people to come out and speak publicly. You've met her. We've been to many of her talks because for 10, 15 years ago, she was the voice to say, wait a second, get some sensory into these children. You've got to get them motivated. You've got to get them moving. And she was asked about nonverbal children and being someone who was severely autistic, how was that a reflection? And she said, well, sometimes when we hear it because of the auto processing, it comes in as mumble. So if you're going, Loki, how was your day? That non-expressive verbal child may hear, and they're not going to repeat it because they don't know what they're saying. At the same time, if you are expecting this child to come out speaking as if they had read the Encyclopedia Britannica, then you're already setting them up to an expectation that they're not going to meet. And then is it them shutting themselves down because they know they're not meeting that expectation? And I can tell you, I've seen that. I've seen it in 3-year-olds, and when you, this is triggering emotion. When you see a 3-year-old that's already has the expectation of perfection. And that if I do anything that's not the norm, then that's failure.
Yes.
Then you watch them. Their whole body language changes. They cocoon. We've seen it. Think about it in
They're
early
too
intervention.
afraid to fail, so they don't do anything at all.
And where does that come from? All right, families, we'll be right back after this special message. Friends and family, are you looking for a place for your student to learn job skills? The prerequisites in order to even apply for a job? Well, that's why we created the Legacy Launchpad. We are going to teach your student job skills so that we can fill their resume before they even get started. Come on down and find out what job career solutions are available for your neurodivergent student. www.lepcihighschool.com. And now, back to the Purple Couch Podcast.
Yeah, I think what we're highlighting too, the word perfection is kind of a misnomer, because a lot of what we're highlighting, I think, is when there's an expectation and the individual feels a certain amount of pressure to meet that expectation. And then they don't meet that expectation, and that sense of that feeling and that emotional outcome of feeling defeated, feeling inadequate, things like that. We see that throughout our history, right? From children to athletes to musicians to politicians. And one of the, I'm gonna piggyback on a phrase you've coined, that we're all perfectly flawed.
Yes.
And I think there's substance to that when we talk about perfection is flawed. And to be flawed is perfect.
Yeah.
So I just, I think that's, we didn't rehearse that or not, but it kind of plays into all that. So I think of like what makes, just to name a few names, like what makes Michael Jordan, LeBron James, one of the best basketball players ever. I'm not going to go into who's the GOAT, but like, is that they always learn from their mistakes.
Yep.
So they're not perfect, quote unquote, right? They never had 100% miss it.
But
Right.
No
failure
misses.
is the best teacher.
But failure is the best teacher. What makes Elon Musk such a success story? Well, he didn't always have great wins,
No.
right? Warren Buffett is one of my favorite investors to follow, because not all of his investments landed. So I think that there's a lot of power to really recognizing that perfection means that you are flawed, but you're learning from that.
While you're saying that, number one, thank you. There was a band, Satsang, and when I was going through my spiritual awakening or change in my personal reality, that's when I was shifting and learning to take the moment to pause. They had some of their lyrics, and when I was listening to it, it was talking about don't judge the person that you see sitting in front of you today. There's a lot of training and learning that has come into making each one of us the people that we are when we communicate with each other, when we're a parent, when we're in the classroom, when we're talking to our neighbors and our friends or our colleagues or our coworkers, and taking that personal time to acknowledge that. That's where it comes in, that we're perfectly flawed, because that's what makes us as individuals. When we talk about these expectations as a society in general, that we're either shoving down the throats of our children,
or trying to just
how about
rail
living
them.
up, yes, or living up to the expectations of society around you.
It becomes sorry.
Manny and I, in early intervention especially, when we have parents coming in for their intake, they're judging their child already. Well, why? One of the things we ask, so why did you bring little Johnny here today? Why is Sally here today? Tell me about the things that you're seeing. What is it that has you red flagged, that you see there's a delay? And a lot of the times, has nothing to really do with the child that's standing right there in front of us. It is because they're comparing the child to a sibling.
Yes.
They're comparing the child to the neighbor down the street. They're comparing this child. And,
this child needs to be somewhat to my liking, so I'm going to steamroll him in the direction that I want him to. And if he doesn't go in the direction that I want him to, then I feel like I personally have set up a failure, and now I am a bad parent.
What you're stating is another thing we see all the time, is that the expectations of an unfulfilled life the parent puts on the child.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times that happens with our neurotypical. We see it not as much in our elementary or early intervention. That comes into play in middle school. When we have families that are coming in and the child is in all diagnoses, a neurotypical child.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just what you said there. It is that the child is not living up to the expectation of what the parent wants.
Yeah.
And I think that's, again, where we have to, as society, when we talk about perfection, we have to remember that we are all individuals.
Yeah, perfection is just an opinion.
And yes, not just an opinion. I like to go back with facts. So we started off talking about beauty.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what I can tell you is that we've moved so far away from true history and understanding our past, which is why we're doomed to repeat it in the future, is that we think about, all right, let's use the curvy woman, okay? Well, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was listening to a biohacker on a podcast, and they were talking about fasting. And we were looking at the royalty and things like heart disease. This was not a disease that happened to the common folk. It only happened to people that could afford to eat, Or we look in Middle Eastern cultures, Indian cultures, that the more voluptuous the woman was, well, that was breeding hips. She could have children. She could raise a family. I mean, these are things that, as we've transformed in society, we've now disdained from, when really that was a sign of cultural well-being.
Oh, yeah.
It was, I could afford to eat 3 sandwiches a day, so I'm going to have a little extra weight, And then if we want to go back even further in history, we want to go back to, your roots, my roots, go back to Viking history. You wanted to have some meat on your bones because then you could survive the winter.
Yeah, we've focused so much on vanity and sexual,
exploitation. That's what it really comes down to.
Exploitation and vanity, where we will never let the child express themselves for what they want to do because it doesn't line up with our expectations.
Society's expectation. That's a big one right there.
And cultural too. I think you nailed that. Because I grew up, in Spanish culture, and women dressing a certain way, that they are in the home. They are homemakers. They're not really reinforced as women to be in the workplace. That's probably newer now in this generation. But me growing up, it was not uncommon to see the role of the man versus the woman and things like that, and how that was heavily reinforced.
Reinforced.
Mm-hmm. And when it came to the way they look. You mentioned going to grocery stores and shopping malls. That was actually quite the norm for me growing up in Miami. Women dressed to the nine, and young girls too, and the mothers reinforcing that of the girls, to dress up in dresses and makeup and stuff like that. So it was pretty normative behavior growing up. I don't know if I thought about it in terms of being perfect, but kind of looking back in hindsight, I guess that was kind of setting that expectation and meeting that expectation. And for boys, for me, oh, you're gaining weight. You should be muscles. You should be going out. You should be playing sports. You should be doing this.
You should be doing this,
right?
And so you want to be doing this.
So it's meeting those expectations. And we haven't even gotten into the world of academics.
No.
So in certain cultures, straight A's is required, by the parents, by society, etc.
Absolutely.
Where me and my ex, we would get into debates about Sabrina's, grades and Aiden's grades. I'm okay with C's. C's, it means you're learning, you're struggling, and you're going to learn from that struggle, versus the other party wanted A's and B's. And so you could see the pressure that it lends itself to the kids, you know?
I think about that with my sister and I. There was a different standard, an expectation that if my sister brought a C in, that was okay because she had to struggle to get that C. If I brought a C in, I was grounded. It was like, things come easier to you. I don't expect you to be, and again, talk about animosity between siblings in there. So I think that as we're wrapping up our episode and we are giving our tips from the couch to our families, for me, I think the biggest one that I want to give to all the moms, dads, and caregivers listening is that remember that each one of our children, each one of these colleagues in our social circles that we meet are individuals. The biggest setback that we have as society right now is when we sit and we expect our children to emulate ourselves. Remember, they're free thinkers. They're here to be individuals because there is some purpose that this world has of them. And let them find their own purpose. And through their flaws, they can find their own personal perfection.
I love it. What about you, Loki?
I think looking back at our conversations, it's just by the fact that I think the child should be able to express themselves more freely rather than just living up to what the parents expect them to do. I think if you're going to have a child, allow them to have their own tastes in what they think perfection is. Allow them to think for themselves rather than just put all of the guilt of your responsibilities onto the child.
Oh, that sounds so small, but that's so true.
Mm-hmm.
And in the religious realms, we talk about generational curses. And that is exactly what we're talking is by allowing them to be individuals and to break free from these patterns of behavior that we've seen generation after generation.
Yeah,
Yes.
lovely. I guess my wrap up will be, I don't believe that there's such a thing as perfection. I think there's learning. So whether it's a child or an adult, whether it's an athlete or musician or artist, a business person, or someone just trying to pass grade level 6, it's about are they learning what they need to learn to get the correct answer or the correct way of doing something to the point where they feel good about their outcomes, they feel good about their accomplishments, or they feel good about what they did as a mistake and they learn from that.
Yes.
And I think that's really what's most important.
I really like that. Can they find the answer from the mistake?
That's right.
And if we've taught that skill, well, that's a life skill because that means
Huge.
like we're talking about teaching to fluency. They can learn in any environment then because if the challenge has not been successful, if you can take a moment, step backwards and learn, then there's nothing that can stop you.
And that in itself could be perfection.
Oh, absolutely.
Get perfect at learning. There you go.
Oh, I like that.
Get perfect
So that's
at
how
learning.
we're going to end our episode today. We're going to try to be perfect in learning. I really like that as we end today. So, moms and dads, if you like this episode, please remember to hit the like and subscribe button so that we can take and bring our information into your homes. Until next time, we'll see you all again soon. Bye.